Yeah. So, with that being said, yeah, we are going to now transition to our second speaker of the night, Ted Stewart, with the Police Accountability Howard County Police Accountability Task Force. And Ted, did you need to screen share or anything?
Yes, yes, I do.
Okay, I will give. Got half the people on the call co-host. Oh, you already got it. Okay, cool. Thank you.
First of all, thank you, Marge. That was very informative, and I learned a lot. I knew that he had two sides. There were a lot of good things that he did, but there were also some issues as it related to racial disparities and his policies as it relates to people of color. So it was a dichotomy when you look back on his record. And it kind of uh, falls into what's going on here in Howard County a little bit as well, because a lot of people think that these racial disparities in policing happens other places, but it really is happening in Howard County as well. So what I wanted to do today, this deck was prepared to really give you an update in terms of what's happening in Howard County. Some of this information was surprising to us as well, and we've been on a journey learning this information over the last 7 or 8 months and trying to work with Howard County leadership to put things in place to remedy this. We've been working with them, but there seems to be no sense of urgency. Everybody seems to be just moving very, very slowly and not with any sense of urgency. So we got involved with learning about this through some police accountability meetings earlier in the year. They had asked the police department to provide information in terms of their demographics as it relates to engagements with Black African Americans and other people of color. And there was just some disturbing information that came about as it relates to the information that the Howard County Police Department shared, and also the Sheriff's Department. They shared information as well. The information that I'm showing you, I have some graphs to show you, was specific information that we got from the Howard County Police Department. They did mention in the meeting, the PAB did get the information, but we were not able to get it. So the graphs that we're showing has to do with Black and African Americans, but we didn't have the specific racial demographic information on Hispanics and other people of color, but they did mention in the meetings that there were similar racial disparities for other racial groups as well. We also did, we have a wonderful person on our team who has a PhD in mathematics. And one of the things that Chief Dare said during the meetings, when he was challenged to say, well, why are you stopping Black African American drivers more than their representation in Howard County? He speculated, but didn't have any proof, that these were drivers predominantly coming from other counties. I guess, with the quotes, he didn't say it, but probably trying to say that they're coming from Baltimore and other parts of PG County. I'm not sure what he was trying to say. And unfortunately, the PAB accepted that explanation, but it was no substantiation. And he said he was speculating. He really did not know. And he did not indicate that he was going to do any more detailed research to find out what the answer was. So we believe that urgent action is required. We've been working for several months, but first, let me just give you 2 seconds on us. We're Howard County residents. We started in the summer of 2020 after the murder of George Floyd. And when we first got together, we wanted to do something where we weren't really sure what we wanted to do, but we felt that we should probably focus on our own community in Howard County. It's very difficult to change things as you get up the ladder in terms of the state and at a national level. So we kind of wanted to focus on Howard County. We focused on specific campaigns. So our first campaign was a body worn camera program. At the time, Howard County did not have a program, and we pushed to get that program in place. And then in the middle of getting that in place, where we got promises, the county executive defunded the program. So we took the money away, and then we fought, and finally the county council approved the money for the program. So that was a lot of drama there. We also were involved with the Police Accountability Board legislation across the state. The Maryland state requires that major counties have a police accountability board. but they leave it up to the county executive to determine what the structure should look like and how it's going to work and what type of tools they have. And the initial legislation that came from the county executive was very weak. It also was very law enforcement centric, where most of the people on the board would have been from the police department. So we worked very closely with the county council members to get some of that legislation changed. We weren't successful in all of it, but we were able to get some legislation change where they changed the structure of the board, and they gave them some tools to be able to be more involved in terms of police accountability. And a current project is this racial disparity project. We have, and thank you very much for being a partner with us. So you've been supportive all along, so we really do appreciate your support. These are our other coalition partners. We partner with other organizations throughout the county. This is the one slide that really got our attention. This was presented back in June of 2023. The racial demographics in Howard County is roughly about 21%. And the Howard County Police Department showed the police department, the Police Accountability Board, these stats. 58% of the arrests were Black African Americans, although we represent 21% of the population. 59% of use of force, 56% pointing a weapon, gun or taser, adult criminal citations, juvenile citations, and also the sheriff department as well had racial disparities in their number. So the question really is why. We suspect certain things, but we really need to dig deep and find out why this is happening, and we need to figure out what are we going to do about it. One of the things that, as I mentioned earlier, Chief Durr speculated is that this racial disparities were from people driving from other counties. Someone in our group did a study going back 5 years. The numbers are still pretty much the same. They're almost twice the number of Black drivers stopped relative to our racial demographic representation in the county. We also looked at one of the things, the Maryland race-based traffic stop dashboard. Anybody can look this up. We found that they actually show you where those where the residents are who are stopped, and it shows you what county they're coming from, and also what if they're coming from out of state as well. And the numbers still don't support the number of stops. So even if we look at all of the stops from all of the people coming into the county, we're looking at Black drivers and other people of color being stopped much higher than their racial demographics. So what did we do about it? We immediately started talking to the county executive office. We've had several meetings with the police department. We've had meetings with the Police Accountability Board, and we were also starting to meet with the county council. We met directly with Ms. Cavalon. She's the chief of staff for Dr. Ball. We told her about this disturbing information. She indicated she was concerned, and she coordinated a meeting with us and the police department to talk about it. They mentioned at that meeting that they're looking to put together some type of a racial equity strategic plan that's going to look across the whole county on issues as it relates to healthcare, policing, education, and so forth. We said to her, that's not sufficient. You need, for us to be able to determine what's causing these racial disparities in Howard County as it relates to policing, you need to bring in a third-party expert that is knowledgeable in terms of how to conduct that study. They're knowledgeable about police, the algorithms in terms of how to get the data. They look at hiring practices and a variety of other things. You can't bring in this generic person to look at the specific problem in the police department. So we've let them know that that's not going to solve the problem, and that's not acceptable. It's almost like you're having a heart problem, you're getting ready to have a heart attack, and you're bringing in a general practitioner to give you advice in terms of what to do about your heart condition. We've also had meetings with Chief Durr, and we met with his senior staff. They acknowledged that there's a problem. However, they have not communicated any plans to expeditiously address these disparities. They just said, there's a problem, but they haven't said they're not going to do anything about it. They talk about training. They have these training courses and stuff like that, but that's about all he said, that they're putting together training courses for the police department. The Police Accountability Board, we've been very disappointed with them. They've had this information since June, when the police department presented it to them. They've had the police department come in to explain it, and they take their explanations without any substantiation, and they have not done anything further with a sense of urgency to address this issue. So we've been very concerned about them. We've sent them several letters. They've only responded once. They did, in their last meeting, they did indicate, though, from the information that we sent them, that they did agree that we need to bring in a third party. So at least we're making some progress. That was in their meeting in December this month. So after 6 months, they did decide that we need to bring in someone to take a look at this data. But we have 3 recommendations. They didn't move on any of the other 2 recommendations. We've also met with we met with Deb Young earlier in the year. She was very concerned about the data and very, very supportive, and we really appreciate her support. She advised us that we should be continuing the conversations with the county executive's office, with the police department, the PAB, and other council members. And she asked us to come back to her if we needed more support, which we're going to be doing. When we get to my recommendations, you'll see that we're going to need to get the county council involved with this. We do have a meeting with Liz Walsh. She actually reached out to us after she saw this information. She contacted us directly, and we're scheduled to meet with her in January. We haven't heard from the other county council members yet, but we're going to try to schedule a meeting with them in January or February. So we have 3 recommendations. They're very reasonable. Number 1, we need to bring a third-party expert in the field of police accountability to assess the root causes, and this would be across all racial, including all racial bias. We look at the whole spectrum of people within Howard County, and we need to have this expert develop a comprehensive mitigation plan. We actually even gave them an example of best practice after the murder of Walter Scott in North Charleston. They brought in a third-party firm to do an analysis of their racial disparities in the county, and they did an excellent job. It's a comprehensive report, and they came in with a roadmap in terms of what the police department could do to make positive change in terms of reducing the racial demographics. The second thing is we need to develop metrics and targets to measure and reduce these racial disparities. If the police department doesn't have haven't developed specific metrics, how are they going to ever know how to make things better? So we need to develop those metrics and targets to measure and reduce those racial disparities. And the third request is that we need a legal requirement for the law enforcement agencies to report this information to the public, including demographic data on officer engagements with the public. Now, this is not new in Maryland. Montgomery County has had this for 2 or 3 years, and every year the police department has to provide demographic data in terms of their engagement with the public. Right now, the only legal requirement the Howard County Police Department has right now is with the state of Maryland. The state of Maryland requires all police departments to provide racial demographic data for traffic stops only. So it doesn't include things like use of force, citations, and other types of things like that. And that's the problem. There's no legal requirement for Howard County to do it, so they basically report what they want to report. And you might have seen a lot of press about this new dashboard that they have. The dashboard, in our opinion, is a failure because it only reports what we already know. We already know that we know the racial demographics of the traffic stops because the Maryland state requires them to report it. So they're reporting that. So that's not new information. What they aren't telling you with the traffic stops is that even though they're showing you the actual stops, they're not showing you how that compares to the actual demographics in Maryland, which I'm sorry, in Howard County, which is about 21%. So they might be showing 40-50% of the traffic stops are in Howard County or for Black African Americans, but they're not actually telling you that the demographics of Blacks in Howard County are about 20%. Similarly, they have on this dashboard, reports of crime, different, house break-ins, car thefts, and those types of things. You can do a deep dive into the crime, but that's a crime report that has nothing to do with racial demographics. So it's a total failure. They even the press conference they talk about, they wanted to take down all barriers for the public not being able to get this information. And the dashboard is really, in our opinion, a failure. So I'm here that evening to ask for your support. We'd like you, if you could, to spread the word and share these racial disparities with people that you know in the community. We are starting a email campaign. There's a link. I'll show you how to do that. And this link is very easy. It's on Action Network. All you do is one click, two or three clicks, and you're sending an email directly to the county executive, the council members, the police department, the sheriff's department, and the police accountability board. So all of those people will be alerted that this is not acceptable and we need to move forward with resolving this. We're also going to have a press conference tomorrow at 10 o'clock in front of the George Howard building. I'm not sure how we know. It's one of those things where you invite people to come, but you don't know who's going to come. So, but we're going to have a press conference tomorrow. We've invited the press to be there, and we're also going to put it on our Twitter or X page so people can see it. And we want to alert the public about this problem and ask them to participate in our email campaign to let Howard County leadership know that this is not acceptable. So this is our QR code for the email campaign that goes directly to Action Network. And you can also go to our website, patf-hoco.com. And on that front page where it says what's hot, if you go to the email campaign link, that will also bring you there as well. I'm also going to send Jake a copy of this deck, and hopefully he can share that with the people on the call here so that they can see it. And then finally, this is our contact. If you have any more questions that you would like to ask us, visit our website, or you can follow us on X, on Twitter. These are the ways you can contact us. So I'll stop talking and I'm open to any questions that you have. I recognize it's late in the evening and you probably want to get some dinner or get some rest. So I'll be, but I am open to answering any questions you might have. So I see hands up. I'm not great with the chat room, so I'm going to look at my screen and just ask on the screen. The first person I see is Yvonne. You have your hand up, so I'm going to go to you, and then I'll go across the screen to the people that have their hand up.
Hi, thank you for that, Ted. So I don't want to in any way diminish your report, but we know that this happens all over the country, right? Almost
Yes.
everywhere.
Yes.
So my question to you is, do you know of any training program for the police which actually works in cutting this down? Is there a training program?
Yvonne, I think it's more than a training program. I think we have to have a holistic look at this. I don't think one training program, I was in corporate for many years and we had training programs, but it's more the culture, it's the training programs, it's a variety of different things. So I'll give you an example. The situation that happened in Charleston after the murder of Walter Scott, they brought in this third-party company. The name of the company is CNA. They're based in Arlington, Virginia. They went down there and they did a holistic analysis. They looked at the demographics of the police department, how many females, how many males, what were the racial demographics and so forth. They looked at the training programs. They talked to the community. And so they gathered all of this information and they came back with something like 40 to 50 recommendations. And then there's a program of implementing these recommendations. These problems didn't start overnight, and of course, they're not going to be solved overnight. But the North Charleston is now going forward with these recommendations and putting them in place. Now, I haven't tracked to find out what the results of that is, but I don't think there's one magic bullet to, excuse the expression, don't want to use the word bullet, but one magic solution for this. I don't think we can say if you put in a training program, you're going to solve this, because that's not going to change the culture if you've had terrible hiring practice and so forth. So I think it's a holistic approach. That's why our first recommendation is let's bring in an LEA data expert that's knowledgeable about how to solve these problems, that have a track record of working with counties across the country, and that can help counties navigate the things they need to do. I hope that answered your question. All right. The next.
It partially answers my question. The problem, of course, and we know that it's institutional racism. The fact is that racism has not gone away. And so the police departments being out there in the community, they reflect that more than other institutions, perhaps. That's why we see it and we hear about it. So the question is, can we, of course we can, if it takes long enough, change the culture of the whole country to bring it to the country's consciousness that it exists and we need to do something about it, or we need to start doing something about it. That's why I'm asking about any kind of program that works. I understand you're looking at it holistically. And of course,
so
it has to be looked that way. But how do you train people not to be racists and not to think racially when they're out there in the public doing their jobs?
Some of the things that we read, and what I'll also do, because I'll send to Jake and then you can read it as well. I will send you the CNA report. One of the things that they did was to, when you talk about how do you train people not to be racist, that's a big challenge. But one of the things that they found in this report is having them talk directly to the public and having the public have a lot more say in terms of what the hiring practices are, having more meetings with them face to face. So you're talking to a human being to a human being. A lot of those things are the things that came out of this report, and I can send that to you. You can take a look at it. And again, there's no magic solution. This is something, as you said, it's a national program. Now you said, how do we solve the national issue? We moved from that. We said that we have more involvement and more a way to make a difference locally. We support anything nationally that's along this line, but we said that we're a very small group. We have our good coalition partners like yourself, but we can't solve the national problem. So what we try to do is solve the things that we can see locally. All right.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne. Jenny, I see your hand up. You're on mute.
Unmute.
Sorry about that. Great presentation, Ted. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I just have a quick question. The slide that you had, I think it said 20% of Howard County, the population is Black. Is that correct?
Yes. You want me to bring that back up again?
No, it's okay. Is that the driving population or is that the total population?
That's the total population of Howard County is roughly about 21% African American.
Okay, is it worse than if you just got what the actual percentage is based on the legal age to drive, and there'd be higher percentage than of stops because the percentage of the population? Anyway, you can figure it out. You see where I'm going.
That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that, but because they use the same measuring tool for all the races, so you basically are looking at all whites, all African Americans, all Hispanics, all Chinese, Asian. It kind of negates that because you're looking all at the same measurement. So, but it's roughly about 21%, and the stops were roughly twice the demographic. So you're looking at 40%, 45% in some cases. And when you're looking at some of the other interactions with the police department, they were even worse, and even going down to juvenile citations. I mean, across the board, it was not good. And we're just very concerned that, leadership has known this actually, this has been going on for years. We're just putting it to paper, but this has been going on for many years in Howard County.
Yeah, no,
that
I'm
an-
not, I think, I understand, but I just am curious about whether the basis for their data needs work, but that's not my field, whether it's white, black, or anything. It should actually be drivers. But any rate, I'm just trying to understand it. Is there any analysis of the reason for stops so that you can compare? Do they have to write that out as to why they stopped this person or that person, regardless of race? And then, I mean, you want the race included in there so that then you could do an analysis of, by even cop, all the stops and the reason they gave for the stop. And then, see if there's a pattern there is what I'm getting at.
Right, that's a great question. So the Maryland State dashboard actually excludes things that would negate a racially based stop. For example, they exclude from the information traffic stops for radar, for example, because radar, you don't see a race. You're down, you're a mile away, half a mile away. I don't know what the distance is, but they
Right.
pull the radar gun out and they say you're going X amount and they stop. So the Maryland State dashboard has about 7 or 8 exclusions. They are specifically looking at traffic stops related to that's a visual. That's
Right.
visual. And I don't have, I apologize, I don't have those definitions, but if you go to the website that we have in our deck, when I send you, you can go to the website and they will actually give you the definition of those stops that were how they defined a traffic stop. That was one of the things actually Chief Dare said at one of the PAB meetings, that there are types of stops that they wouldn't know the race, but he wasn't familiar with the definition on the dashboard because the dashboard actually excluded those types of stops. And it was only looking at stops that would have been, the officer would have had an opportunity to look at a person's race.
Well, that's the one I'm talking about is there, any data on those type of stops that would give the reason the police officer gave for the stop, maybe the response the driver had, and then race, and sort of doing more in-depth analysis to try and get to maybe there's X number of cops that really need a lot more work.
Well, yeah, well, Ginny, that is exactly why we need a third-party data expert, because they have we talked to this group in Arlington. They have algorithms. They work with the police department, and they have algorithms to be able to go in there and do exactly what you just said. You can do a deeper dive into the officers. You can do a deeper dive into zip code. You can do, you can also look at how many were Howard County versus other counties, how many were from out of state and so forth. So that's why, and you can't have the police department do their own checking, right? So that's why that's the first recommendation we have, is to bring in a third party expert. And they have this particular firm that we talked about. I'm not recommending them because there's several, but this particular firm actually has all of the apps and the algorithms to be able to do the deeper dive, to do a better understanding in terms of maybe all of those stops were 5 officers. You never know, to your point, it could be 5 officers. So that data is not available to us. We're just at the high level area saying, we need to bring in an expert. I'm not a data person expert, but we need to bring in an expert that does this, understands police data and knows how to analyze it.
Yeah, and I think the important thing is, before you can analyze, you need to know what relevant data that you want to collect, and then collect it. Yeah, so that's great. If you can get to that point, that would be very interesting.
Right.
Thank you for doing this, for working on it.
Thank you. Thanks for the support. Kate, I think.
Kat, yeah,
Kat, okay,
just
Kat,
really quick question. You said
Yes.
Montgomery County also does reporting. Do the statistics bear out the same thing, that they're pulling
Yes.
over more people of color?
Unfortunately, yes, unfortunately, Howard County is not alone. Montgomery is pretty bad. In fact, several other counties are likewise as bad. But I think one of the things that we've heard when we talk to people in Howard County, they don't believe this is happening in Howard County. They use, oh, that's happening in Baltimore County. That's happening in Baltimore, but we're it's not happening here. We talked to one of the council member, I'm not going to mention a name, who said they were shocked to hear this. This stuff doesn't happen in Howard County.
That was my other question. Given we have an African-American county executive, one of our council members, Opal Jones, is also an African-American man, and yet You say you haven't met with them. Are they not concerned?
Well, we met with him on other campaigns. He was not as supportive. I mean, he listened to us and he met with us, but I think that the council members that have been very supportive have been Liz Walsh and Deb Young. They've been extremely supportive. They were helpful in getting some of those legislative changes done when they were looking at putting in the PAB. And I think Rigby helped one of the tie votes a couple of times, but those were the people that we kind of depended on. Now, I don't, we have, and now in fairness to the other people, we have not talked to Liz Walsh. We're talking to her in January about this issue, and we're trying to set up a meeting with Opal and Youngman. So those, we have not talked to them yet, and we plan to do so in January. So I can't give you a response in terms of whether or not they will support these recommendations or not.
I just don't understand why they haven't jumped at the chance. And I just saw that the body worn cameras almost was, you know, not even going to happen. Yet we're supposed to be that progressive out here, full of Democrats. And yet Montgomery County has had theirs for a very long time. And I think it's a very effective program. But I also want to ask you about traffic cameras. Do you think they're more effective than actually having traffic cops out there and being fair and equitable?
Our traffic, I'm sorry.
Yeah, like speed cameras, red light cameras, all that stuff, things I don't like personally, but is that more effective?
I don't know. I'm not an expert on this, Kat, so I'm not really sure. I can't answer that. Sorry, I'm not, you know, I would kind of like to bring in an expert on some of this stuff. We're kind of saying a lot of the answers we don't know, so we'd like to bring in an expert to make that decision. So I'm sorry, I can't answer that question for you.
Okay, thank you. And thank you so much for doing this work. It's very important.
Thank you, Kat. Appreciate you. Marge?
Yeah. What is the racial makeup of Howard County Police Department? Is it mostly white or?
Well, I don't have that information. I can get that. That's a great question. I know at the senior level, it is mostly white.
Yes.
The senior, because we met with the senior team in a meeting with Chief Durr, and that was mostly white. So that senior team is. I don't have the racial demographics of the police department themselves, though.
Okay.
That would be one of the things that the third party would come in and do an analysis, look at their hiring practices, not only just racial, but also gender as well. One of the studies that I found is that they found that female officers have a better way of de-escalating situations and coming out with better outcomes a lot of times. And that's there's studies going around with that. So female officers have been you know, great assets to police departments. I don't know what the gender demographics are. So we should be looking not only at racial demographics, but also gender demographics as well.
Okay. Good.
All right. So I think that is all of the questions that I see there. And I want to thank you so much for your support. And if you, I will send the deck to everybody. And if you could support our email campaign, or if you have any questions whatsoever, please reach out and let us know. All right. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye now.
Yes. Thank you so much, Ted. Great presentation. I hope everybody fills out that letter writing campaign. Put it in the chat. We'll send it out via email.
Jake, yeah, one thing on the email campaign, we found that, believe it or not, people don't think they're effective, but they actually got us past the finish line on the funding for the body-worn camera, because there were so many emails that went to Dr. Ball, and it was embarrassing because they were talking about it was only like a $1.5 million cost, and they have almost a $2 to $3 billion budget. And we all know that you can find $1.5 million by just, you know, opening up your checkbook somewhere. You know, so it was a ludicrous, you know, answer, and the emails, I think, embarrassed them into doing something. So I think these numbers, these stats, the stats are what they are, And the fact that they're not doing anything about it, they've known it. I think with people sending in emails, I think it can really make a difference. So I appreciate if you could do that. Take care. Bye-bye now.
Yes, thank you, Ted. Although, Joel, did you have something to say?
Been trying to
sorry,
put in the chat that if you go to the county's new traffic dashboard, it answers some of these questions. It says that 40% are black stops, 50%
yeah.
are in Howard County, but when you click on Howard County, the black stops goes down to 35%. So
Joel, the dashboard for traffic stops is just a repeat of what's on the Maryland State dashboard. So it's not like they're giving us any new information. And when you look at the traffic stops, depending on which year, which you can actually go through several years, you can look at that, but you also need to compare that to the actual demographics of Howard County for those different races.
yes, they didn't say it would cover everything.
I'm sorry?
Not going to cover everything, but the data is only as good as the officer acquires.
Well, there's two pieces to this. They're reporting on the dashboard traffic stops, and that's what's required by Maryland state law. But what they are not reporting are the demographics for other incidents or engagement with the public. So they're not reporting the demographics for arrests, for use of force, for citations, for juvenile citations, and so forth and so on. That information, we actually met with them before the dashboard was completed, and we requested to provide input on the dashboard, and they ignored our recommendation. We had a meeting with Chief Durr and his senior team. They told us that this dashboard was coming out, and we requested several times to meet with them. They said initially they were going to meet with us. Then they said they couldn't meet with us, and they asked us to send them the recommendations. So we sent them our recommendations, and lo and behold, the dashboard comes out, and it does not speak to anything as it relates to demographics for the other things other than what they had to do statutorily by law on the Maryland website. That's why we're asking, one of our recommendations is that they have to do it legally, legislatively legal. That's where we'll work with the county council to make sure that it's not just something they do if they want to do it. It's something that they're required to do, similar to what we do in Montgomery County. All right, I'll let you go. Take care. Bye-bye.
Yes, bye. You can hop off. Yeah, there he goes. There he goes. Before anyone else can ask any other questions. So thanks to Ted. Again, hope everybody, does do the email writing campaign. I was gonna make a joke about we have 30 more minutes of slides to go through, but I don't even want to joke about that. And so thank you, Mark. Thank you, everybody. Good meeting, and we will see you again next month. Take care.